This is another sign of the times, a commentary and an analysis. More than 700 Occupy Wall Street protesters are arrested. In a tense showdown above the East River, the police arrested at least 700 demonstrators from the Occupy Wall Street protests who took to the roadway as they tried to cross the Brooklyn Bridge on Saturday afternoon. The police said it was the marchers' choice that led to the enforcement action. Protesters who used the Brooklyn Bridge walkway were not arrested. Paul J. Brown, the chief spokesman for the New York Police Department, said, "Those who took over the Brooklyn-bound roadway and impeded vehicle traffic were arrested, but many protesters said they believed the police had tricked them, allowing them onto the bridge and even escorting them partway across, only to trap them in orange netting after hundreds had entered. The cops watched and did nothing, indeed, seemed to guide us onto the roadway," said a media coordinator for Occupy Wall Street who marched but was not arrested. Things came to a head shortly after 4 p.m. as approximately 1,500 marchers reached the foot of the Brooklyn-bound car lanes of the bridge just east of City Hall. In their march north from Zuccotti Park in Lower Manhattan, headquarters of the past 2 weeks of a protest movement against what demonstrators call inequities in the economic system, they had stayed on the sidewalks, forming a long column of humanity penned in by officers on scooters. Where the entrance to the bridge narrowed their path, some marchers, including organizers, stuck to the generally agreed-upon route and headed up onto the wooden walkway that runs between and about 15 feet above the bridge's traffic lanes. But some 20 others headed for the roadway, said Christopher T. Dunn of the New York Civil Liberties Union, who was with the marchers. Some of them chanted, "Take the bridge." They were met by a few police supervisors who blocked the way and announced repeatedly on bullhorns that if they kept blocking the road, they would be arrested. There were no physical barriers, though, and at one point the marchers began walking up the road with police commanders in front of them, seeming from a distance as if they were leading the way. The chief of department and a horde of other white-shirted commanders were among them. After allowing the protesters to walk about a third of the way to Brooklyn, the police then cut the marchers off and surrounded them with orange nets on both sides, trapping hundreds and hundreds of people, Mr. Dunn said. Protesters at times chanted, "White shirts, white shirts," and officers began making arrests, at one point plunging briefly into the crowd to grab a man. Charges against those arrested were not immediately available. A freelance reporter for the New York Times was among those arrested. Mr. Dunn said that he believed only people at the very front could hear the warning, and was concerned that those in the back would have no idea that it was not okay to walk on the roadway. Mr. Brown said that people in the rear who might not have heard the warnings were not arrested and were free to leave. Earlier in the afternoon, as many as 10 correction department buses, big enough to hold 20 prisoners apiece, had been dispatched from Rikers Island in what one law enforcement official said was a planned move on the protesters. So, in other words, the police led them into a trap, or so they say. How do you arrest a bunch of peaceful protesters? You could escort them onto a bridge and then block both ends and surround them with nets. What has happened to this country? A psychotherapist, 56, from Brooklyn, who was up on the walkway, said the police seemed to make a conscious decision to allow the protesters to claim the road. They weren't pushed back, he said. It seemed that they moved at the same time. The man said he had left the walkway and joined the crowd on the road. It seemed completely permitted, he also said. There wasn't a single policeman saying, "Don't do this." He added, "We thought they were escorting us because they wanted us to be safe." He left the bridge when he saw officers unrolling the nets as they prepared to make arrests. Many others who had been on the roadway were allowed to walk back down to Manhattan. Mr. Brown said the police did not trick the protesters into going onto the bridge, even though that is what it sounds like. This was not a trap, he said. They were warned not to proceed. Perhaps protesting in New York City is become a very risky thing to do. And these are more signs of the end times, transition days, which is a time of extraordinary changes, happenings, and events. Everything is connected, and everything is numbered. It's also about what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations. Revelation chapter 12. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. 2. And she, being with child, cried, laboring in birth, and pained to be delivered. 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads, and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. 4. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. 5. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God, and to his throne. 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. 7. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. 8. And prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. 10. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. 11. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has but a short time. Yes, it's time for all prophecy to be fulfilled. The time is right now, and these are more signs.